Cool. Hello and welcome. This is episode 7 of the Creating a React App with... No, it's not. Creating a progressive web app with React. It's been a few weeks since we did the last stream, and as you can tell, feeling a bit rusty. Can't even remember the name of what we're supposed to be doing. But yeah, this time what we're going to do is we're going to invest a little bit of time into splitting our code with Webpack. And we'll dive into a little bit more of why we'd want to do that nearer the time. And the other thing what we want to do is we want to see how to make our web application feel more at home on mobile devices and even desktop devices like on macOS. So for example, you should see here I have in my dock the symbol for a letter, which is the blogging application we're creating. And this is pretty cool. It almost puts web apps as a bit more of a first-class citizen. It puts them up there with other apps. They kind of fit in and sit fairly seamlessly with real native apps, which is great for us web developers. So we'll see what kind of steps we can take to make it feel more at home. And yeah, so a few things before we get cracking on with things. All the code can be found on GitHub, which I'll put in the description down below. So feel free to take a dive into that. It also lets you know when the next episode's coming up, what the next episode's going to be, and you can find all the previous episodes on the episode guide, which is cool. And the other thing I wanted to mention, what's changed since last time, is I've switched the hosting. So before we were hosting the application with surge.sh, that's changed, and we're now hosted on letter.roeb.uk, which is my own custom hosting. And there's reasons for this. I feel Surge didn't give me enough flexibility for my hosting needs. It also didn't give me HTTP2 support, which isn't a killer, but when you're chasing getting 100 out of 100 on the Lighthouse score, it's just one of those extra tick boxes to tick off. So I could do that really easily. So there's just a basic box set up there, just serving some static files, and that's cool. That's going to be the new home from this point onwards. So let's kick off with making the web app feel a little bit more like a native app. Get it looking good on mobile devices. So I've got a couple of mobile devices here. I have a iPhone. Bit of an old one, but it still works. And I've also got a Nexus. Is this a Nexus 5X? I think it is a Nexus 5X. Yeah. And we'll see the differences between how these two platforms kind of accept web applications into their kind of like native ecosystem. I mean, kudos to Google. They seem to do a little bit better job and everything fits in a little bit more seamlessly, but Apple, they're not too far behind. They're still pretty good. And I don't know what Microsoft are doing. Are they still making phones? I don't know. All I know is the 3310 is back, and that is all that matters. So, cool. Let's get started with this whole business of making them look good on a mobile. So, Google have a pretty good website for progressive web apps and kind of what's needed. So you can see here, like, why build a progressive web app, and it tells you a few of the bits and pieces. And one of them is kind of like, it's worthy of being on the homepage. So we can see there's a few things what we need to do in order to kind of get our application to be worthy of being on a homepage. And a lot of it centers around this file, which is called just switching windows, a manifest.json file. And this simply just gives us the ability to control how our app's going to look on a mobile device, particularly when it's pinned to their home screen. And for example, when it's pinned down in our dock, down here, And when it also the application launches, we can add splash screens and things like that. One other thing we can do as well is we can give our UI a bit more of a native feel, so it doesn't have to open, for example, if we're loading it in Chrome, it doesn't have to load with the address bar up there. We can kind of get rid of that, make it feel a bit more flush, a bit more native app kind of style. So yeah, let's get kind of cracking on with this. So I think one thing to let me just reset things nicely. So one thing that we kind of need to do, or first off, is maybe to generate a manifest.json file and find out kind of what's in there. So probably the best way to go for this is going to be, wow, I can't even spell generator. Let's just get Google to correct me. Thank you. Is to go just search for a generator file, because it's going to require lots of different sized images and annoying bits and pieces like that. Very much in the same way we have the favicon issue of what size does it need to be. Well, we'll say here's all these different sizes, etc, etc, etc. So we can use a manifest creator to generate a lot of this for us. So I've already done this, but just for the sake of argument, there's this app manifest.firebaseapp.com service, and we can just throw the name of our application here, which is the name you'd see when it was pinned to the home screen. We can give our app a theme color and a background color, and these are more just along the lines of when the app's loaded, what the UI is going to look like and be like. We can get the display modes. This is where we can get the application to appear like it would normally appear in the browser. We can have it as standalone, which is basically going to make it more seamless and appear more like it's just like kind of a native app, so we get rid of all the browser UI pretty much. We can also, if we're creating like a HTML5 game or something that where you really just want to take over the full screen, we can select full screen mode. That's cool. We have the ability to dictate to the user which orientation we want. We can force an orientation basically to the user. And we can just give our application a start URL, which is just going to be the home page. Then we can generate some icons and bits and pieces like that. Now I've already done this because the one downside I've found with this particular application is when it generates all the icons and generates all the different sizes for different screen resolutions and bits and pieces like that, the resizing is just awful, so I kind of cut mine manually. But there's other services out there, but I'm just going to kind of like copy and paste a load of stuff over just to save on a little bit of time, and then we'll see kind of what impact that's had on our application. So, bear with. So I've got all these icons here. I'm going to copy them. So, for now, just so they're out of the way, I'm going to throw in, already got an icon called, icons here. So, what this generator file is going to do is it's going to generate various icons at various sizes. It's going to give us a manifest.json file. The thing what it won't give us is it won't give us favicons at various sizes. I went to a favicon generating site. We can generate more crazy sizes. This whole thing is a complete mess. If everyone could just support like favicon SVGs, where we could just produce one SVG file, that would be great. And I think the basic implementation in a couple of browsers is there, but it's not widely supported, which is a bit of a shame. So that's in there, and I just want to quickly show you the manifest.json file and what this contains. So we can see we've got our name and our short name. They're both the same, and that's how our application, the name of our application, once it's going to be pinned to the screen. And then the only other really useful bit of information which we haven't covered is all these different icons, which we basically just specify the location of where this icon lives, what size it's relevant for, and we pretty much have a MIME type there. And we repeat this for more times than I think is necessary, but hey, it's the web, it's a fragmented system, and we love it. So I've got these icons sat in my source directory, and ultimately I need them to end up in my dist directory. So there's going to be a nice little Webpack plugin we're going to use, which is just going to copy everything from that directory and throw it into our dist directory. So let's find this plugin. Now I believe it's called a Webpack copy plugin. This is. That browser window is way too small for me, so it must be for you. And there we go, copy Webpack plugin. This is good. So I'm gonna yarn add this to our dependencies, and in particular our dev dependencies. We just make everything bigger because I know what it's like watching code on the internet. It's impossibly small. Perfect. So that's in place. So within our production Webpack file, my fingers certainly need to warm up today. Prod.json file. So taking a quick gander at copy Webpack plugin, we're going to have to import this const copy Webpack plugin, and we're going to simply require that. Ooh, okay. So we're going to have to kick things off by adding it down here. Let's make sure you can see this. Hopefully that's big enough. I can just about make it out on the screen, so that is cool. Now, we need to configure this to throw everything into the right place. So we're going to say it's going to be from, we're going to resolve our dir name, and we're going to throw this up a directory into our source, and our source we've got our icons directory, and then we're going to give it a 2. So pick all the files from this directory, throw them into this directory. So we're going to resolve, we're going to grab the dir name of where we are now, we're just going to traverse up and throw things straight into dist, which is good. One other thing I'm going to change is our package.json file as our surge deployment script and our pre-deployment script. And I'm going to rename pre-deploy to build. So I'm just going to build our application, and then at the minute it's almost like a little bit of a manual deploy onto my server. I'm just going to secure copy it up there and yeah, basically blast all the files away and do things like that. So if I do an npm run build, nice. Patterns must be an array, of course. What have I missed? I have missed those. Why you no work? Patterns must be an array. Yeah. Yeah, that's what happens when you put it in completely the wrong place. I am so rusty today. Fingers aren't working. Damn. I'll warm up. It's fine. So, we're gonna see now when we build our file, all of these files are just thrown as a big mess into our dist directory. That's cool. It's working, and that is part of the battle. So, I am just gonna quickly tar this up. So that's out there, and I'm just going to SCP this up to the server. Took a bit longer. I'm just going to SH to my server, run the deploy, and no. Why you do this to me? No, it's worked fine since. And the only reason why that's loading is I think that's loading from the service worker. That's great, temp file 18. Rubbish. So, this could be a very fun live stream. Okay, so we were accessing some files. Yeah, a second ago. It picked a few up. Not a problem. So, see what's in the error log, see if there's anything there. Haha. Okay, so I think I know what this is. And this is because our file was 200.html and I want it to be index.html, which is going to be just the normal kind of regular default file Nginx is going to try and look up and serve. So, my bad. Again, incredibly rusty. Bear with me. Let's do this again. Let's tar it up. Let's throw it up. And let's just deploy that bad boy. Now work, please work. You're joking. I didn't build. Oh my goodness. I should just stop the stream right here. Yeah, I need to retar it. Nah. That's it. I'm retiring. This is the end of me. Right. Third time lucky. Let's do this. Ready? Steady. Yes. Woohoo! Nice one. So, most things kind of look the same, but what I want to do is I want to show you what this should appear like on a phone now. So let me just clear all the history on this thing and all the data, just so we're not kind of getting any weird caching or anything crazy like that. Clear data. And I could also make my face a little bigger, which might help you with this. So, back to the mix. Cool. So, transition is over. So, if I throw this way, what you can see is the application looks fairly normal. And there's a reason for this. Let's go back. Within our HTML file, we need to reference our manifest.json file. And within here, I'm going to put in a load of data. So this is going to be a load of meta tags and a load of things which are just going to kind of sit in the head. And this is going to look like overload. That's because it is, really. So first things first, we're letting the device know that we want the width of our web page to be the device width and the initial scale to be 1. Which just is like a fairly sane standard. We then have a load of Apple Touch icons, various sizes, various screen resolutions supported by different phones, different operating systems. We then got the funky favicon, which is now a ping, not a Nikon, ICO rather. We then have Microsoft's set of standards, which is a start URL, a tile color, and a tile image. So if you think back to when Windows 8 was announced and we had all the kind of like touchscreen interface with all the squares, this is essentially saying if they were to pin our app onto that screen, then our little logo would show up there and we'll give that a colour and a picture to use. And then the other little bits of information are a mixture between kind of like Apple's way of wanting certain bits and pieces to be named and Android. So for example, we're going to get a theme colour, going to give the application a name, and a few of the bits and pieces. And then finally, we'll tell the device where our manifest.json file is. So now that's out of the way, let's go fourth time lucky. So we need to build our app once again. Once it's built, I'm going to tar it up. And then I'm going to copy it up to the server. And deploy it. So now, fingers crossed, I clear everything from here once again, because I don't want any old stuff infecting anything. Perfect. So let me just make my face big. So this is pretty cool. What we can see here is, I just want to keep tapping the screen so it doesn't go off. What we see here is we see the browser UI at the top there. Which way do I need to move this? I need to move it this way. It's kind of gone to a blue, which we specified in the manifest.json file. So it feels more flush. There's a few websites that use this kind of technique. BBC News, if you're in the UK, is one. The Guardian website have a nice blue. Looks cool. And the other thing you'll notice is if I scroll up here, we get this banner at the bottom, which asks me to add the application to the home screen. So let's do that. Let's hit that button there. And it says a letter was added to your home screen. So come over to the home screen and we can see it's picked up our icon and thrown it there. So now, this is cool. We should see a splash screen as soon as I hit this. So we saw our little logo down in the middle, and at the bottom there was the application name. So if I just tap that again, whoa, that happened too fast. It's probably because it was already open. Ready? Put YouTube into like half speed for this. Cool. So once it's loaded from the home screen, we can see the browser UI has completely disappeared. The address bar has gone, and we're in kind of complete full screen mode. This is great for making it feel more like a native application. So that's how things work on Android and Chrome. Pretty nice if you ask me. Let's jump over to the iPhone. And it's going to be a similar thing on here. So let me just sort things out on here. So we'll see our application displays, but with Apple and Safari loving to kind of lock things down, what we don't get is we don't get any nice theme color up here. That's kind of completely gone. And we also haven't had a web banner. I don't believe that iOS supports web banners, so we completely get rid of that. But the one thing we do have is, if I tap that central icon there, we have the ability to add it to the home screen, which is somewhere over here. If I add it to the home screen, it uses the title of the website for its name here, of which I'm just going to quickly rename that to a letter. And click add. So now, on the home screen of the app, or on the home screen of my phone, I have a letter. So if I tap and load this is insanely difficult to do. I would not recommend trying to live stream and do this, but hey, this is where we are. Mishit it, go. So one thing we can see is, again, Apple's kind of adhered to the rules of wanting this to be a standalone kind of application, so we lose the browser UI. We've got no Safari elements in here at all. And which includes, the top address bar, and that really kind of annoying Safari kind of like pop-up at the bottom, which displays when you scroll in one direction but not the other. And if you've ever tried to implement something sticking at the bottom of the page, it can be a right faff. Thanks, Safari. So yeah, that's it there, which is very cool. And there's one way to kind of like help kind of debug this in Chrome, which is pretty handy and it's worth knowing. And one thing I'm going to do before I kind of start this is flick you back over, for one, because you don't want to be seeing my face. Two, I'm going to remove the letter from our application here, or from my dock, rather. I wish I could talk. In fact, it's drink time. So if you can remember from a previous video, we had this service workers tab under application. Well, the one above that, if we can see it, is called manifest. And this is going to detect our manifest file and give us all the information in here. So you can see it's picked up our name, our short name, our start URL, the theme colors, orientation if we put one. It's gone and grabbed all the images. So again, we can click that little link and we can get our access to our manifest.json file. And then another thing we have is we have the ability to kind of simulate adding it to the home screen. Now, we're on a kind of like desktop kind of machine, so we're not going to get like the mobile application way of doing this, but If we were to click add to home screen, we get this little kind of notification area at the top which says add this site to your shelf. I wish the wording was a bit better because I have no idea what a shelf is, but I'm adding it to a shelf. So if I click add, it gives me the ability to name it, which is cool. Then it throws me into somewhere in my machine where I'm in a Chrome apps directory and I have a letter specified here, of which I can drag that down to my dock. And there we go. I've got a website imitating kind of like a native application down in my dock. So I can click a letter and it's just opened it straight up. Unfortunately, it opened it up on another screen. But if I do it again, yeah, it's loaded it there. So I only found out about that yesterday, and I thought, wow, that is incredibly cool, the fact it allows us to do that, especially on Mac. Like, I'd imagine it to be more kind of locked down, but I guess this is thanks to Chrome. It's unfortunate the way you have to kind of add this. It'd be nice if it was kind of more intuitive. But hey, go ahead and test it with a couple of websites, maybe like YouTube or Google themselves, do something similar to that, and you can kind of like pin YouTube or Google down there. I haven't tried it, but feel free to give it a go. So, next thing to do. I think that pretty much covers us for kind of the native kind of application feel. The one thing I could maybe do actually before we jump on is to run another Lighthouse test and see where we are with that. So let me bring this up here and let's generate a new Lighthouse report. Now thinking back, I can't remember the score we got last time, but I'm sure we were in the red. We were in the red or the orange. We basically got performance is pretty good, we've got service worker support, and we're using HTTPS, and I think everything else we got like crosses for. So there's a few things we're failing on, which are a bit tricky to solve, but not too bad. But performance is fast. That should be our key metric, really. It's crucial that our application loads on a mobile really quickly. But we've got HTTPS on here. It's detected that we've got a manifest file that sits here and is in place, and that it contains all the right information. That the installed web app will launch a custom splash screen. It does. The address bar matches the brand colours. Again, it does. The design is mobile friendly, so this is the meta viewport tag. We've been a bit naughty with our CSS, and I think a lot of that is down to the fact I'm using normalize, and normalize probably has as much weight as the whole styling of this application. So I guess if I was being really kind of critical, I'd probably remove normalize and just keep the little bits that I need for my application. But aside from that, I could potentially inline the CSS fairly easily to prevent an extra HTTP request, which is what this critical request chain is doing. That should be fairly easy to do. And the main kind of block of here, and probably one of the most difficult ones to get around, is that the site is progressively enhanced. This is almost like implementing server-side rendering. It doesn't necessarily have to go that far, but ultimately, like, that would be the perfect, most ideal situation we could get to, because we deliver a skeleton HTML file and then we initialize our app, and then it will like fill the DOM with exactly what it needs. And it's just saying that when our app comes down, it's not containing kind of any useful kind of HTML. But anyway, I think 88 out of 100 is pretty good going. For the sake of throwing a manifest file in there and some images. So, enough of that. Let's get on to the juicy stuff. And the juicy stuff being code splitting with Webpack. So, I guess the first thing is kind of what is code splitting and why would you want to use it? Now, code splitting is a way of, well, let's say what we've got to start with. We've got our application split into two files. We have an app file, which contains all our app-specific code. We have a vendor file, which contains all our third-party libraries, so React Router, Preact. What else are we using? Who knows? But those files are kind of split up. But regardless of which page of our application we hit, we're loading all the code required for every single page. And in our simple app, that's probably okay. But in larger applications, you only want to load the required JavaScript for that page and nothing more. So if you've got a page that requires drag and drop, and then you have another page that implements a WYSIWYG HTML kind of thing, they might be quite fairly chunky libraries you're importing. And if the user's only going to ever hit kind of one of those URLs, you're loading a lot of JavaScript in one bundle, which they might not even take advantage of some of it. So what we can do is we can say, hey, for this particular route, this is all the JavaScript I need. For this particular route, this is all the JavaScript I need. And we just essentially what we're doing is we're just giving the user the minimum JavaScript they need in order to do their job. So, in a React app which uses React Router, it's fairly common practice to perform this split at the router level. You can do it more fine-grained than that, it's absolutely fine, but for our application we're just going to cut it at the router level. So if we're at the home page, only going to load the home stuff, and yeah, same with all the other pages. So, the thing to mention here is this is kind of like, so in our app we have imports at the top of our files. Here we go, import React from React. Now, this is kind of like, our imports here, they're all kind of like statically analyzed, kind of like the compile time and everything's kind of picked out. But when we do code splitting, it's more of a dynamic import, as we can kind of see here. So it's essentially what we're going to do is we're going to get Webpack to handle this code kind of splitting for us. And when we dynamically import something, at that moment in time, Webpack's going to say, okay, cool, I know you need a particular bundle now. I'm going to run off, get it, bring it back, compile it kind of into your app, or make it compatible with your app, and then let's kind of run that JavaScript. So we're not going to have to take care of kind of any of that. We're going to get Webpack to do that for us. Now, dynamic imports are a proposed specification. So I believe at this moment in time, it's in stage 3, and there are 4 or 5 stages, stage 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's stage 3 at the minute, so it's looking positive that it'll become an official part of the spec, but it's not there yet, and as we all know, there's no guarantee it's going to become part of the spec. So that's a big caveat. So just be aware, you can implement all this code, and I recommend if you've got a large app, you probably should, but bear in mind, the spec might change, things might get dropped, you might have to refactor parts of your application, but that's kind of where we are. We're just going to have to deal with it. So there's almost kind of like 2 little ways of doing this. There's kind of like this more spec compliant way, and there's more kind of like Webpack way. And I've tried with the more spec kind of compliant way, which is using a Babel plugin Babel plugin, of which hasn't worked for me. I've always had a token error. So I guess when it's kind of like doing all the AST transformation, it's kind of errored. But I want to show you kind of both ways of how it will work. Webpack's documentation's got a great example of using just kind of like the normal proposed spec way of doing things. But I'm going to use kind of webpack system.import opposed to the plain old import kind of way of doing things. Just because I know that works, even though it has been deprecated. So, first thing is first. Let's find our application. I'm just getting a few other notes up. So, we're going to mainly be dealing with our router file here. And the easiest route to do this on, most probably, is going to be our about or our not found component, just because they don't do any, they just simply render a component. They don't have this kind of callback function, which will then render the component with like particular props in here. So let's get down and do this. So we're going to have to create a higher order component, and this higher order component is just going to kind of encapsulate some behavior, which will essentially say, if I've requested this bundle and the bundle hasn't loaded yet, then display a loading icon, which could be a nice fancy spinner or something. But if you have loaded it, if you have loaded this component that we've dynamically pulled in, then just display it. So first things first is let's create a new component. And we'll just call it async route. And a new file in here called async route.js. And in here we're going to import React from React. Seems ages since I've done this. So our async component is going to be class async route, and oh my goodness, I am really struggling at typing. I have no idea why. We're going to have to pull in component as well. And here, I'm going to use React State just to manage this kind of internally. So there's a couple of lifecycle hooks kind of in React. And we're going to use kind of component did mount in a second. But we're going to first just kind of say, let's get our initial state. And our initial state is, linting will play up if we do that, is we're just going to simply return an object, and this object is just going to say loaded is equal to false. So on first render, nothing's loaded. And then we're going to say, if the component did mount, then what we're going to do is we're going to do this dot props dot. We're going to have this kind of like promise object, which I'll go to in a little bit more detail in a second. But then we're going to get a module passed back from this, and we're simply going to set a component is equal to module.default. So think of the module as our component we've gone off and grabbed, and we're using kind of like we're using the new import syntax, but we have to kind of interrupt with the require.js, which is where default comes from. So our default export from the particular module we're loading, set that to be the components, which we can use in a moment's time. Oh my goodness. Set state. I'm going to set our state to loaded is equal to true. And then in our render, I don't want to type this evening. We're going to just say this.state.loaded. So if we've loaded, we want to return this.component, and we'll need to pass some kind of props along, but we'll just leave that for now. And if we haven't loaded, then we just want to return a nice spinner would be ideal to implement, but let's for now just put loading. And the one other thing we need to do is we need to export this. So export the default and async route. So let's give this a go. Might not be ready yet, but if it is, let's use it. So let's try and get our about page dynamically rendering to start with. So the one thing we're going to have to do is we're going to have to import our async route here. And that's going to come from ..async route. Now we're not going to be able to just simply pass a component in here now. What we're going to have to do is we're going to have to say something along the lines of props async route promise, although promise with a lowercase might not be a keyword. So let's just call it loading for now. And here we're just going to say, well, loading is going to be equal to our system.import. And this is kind of where we dynamically kind of like say, hey, go and require this particular component and go do your magic stuff and just give me this component as and when I need it. So we're just going to simply reference the about component here, which, because my typing's pretty bad this evening, we can just copy and paste. And then we don't need this anymore, because we're simply loading dynamically. So let's see how badly we blow up. First time tonight, I think something's gone right. No, it hasn't. Let's do things properly, shall we? I need to close this off. So after here, it's a weird looking syntax at the minute. We failed again. Oh my god, I'm so rusty. This is what happens when you take 2 weeks off. Perfect. So we are compiling correctly now. The one thing to notice is we've got an extra bundle created. And this bundle was created from our system.import. So Webpack recognized we're using system.import and said, or basically told itself, hey, anything that's required as part of this import, which is our about bundle, or I should say our about component, go and create a new bundle for that. So it's created as one.bundle.js. So if I was to load this in the browser, localhost, was it 8080? It's been so long. Turns out it might have been. Let's go to our network tab, JavaScript. So you can see on our home page, we load the bundle file, and then on the about page, it goes and requests the bundle it was created, which was bundle1.js, and goes and fetches that, brings it back down, puts it into our app. So this is cool. So if we were to come straight to this page, we just automatically go and do that as well. So this all happens insanely quickly. So let's slow things down just a touch so we can actually see the loading side of things. So let's go on good old 2G. And if I click about, we should see, and hopefully this will pick up in the stream. No. Okay. Do no throttling for now. Okay, let's do this page, throttle it to regular 2G, go to about, and we saw the loading just flash there for a second, and then as soon as the bundle was loaded, we got the about page to display, which is great. It's exactly kind of what we wanted it to do. The other thing we could do is we could just pass props down as props as well. So if we just did the same thing for our not found page, oh, it's always the end of this. Always the end. Throw in another one of those. Fingers crossed. Compiled successfully. And our linting's playing up now. What is the problem? Required space before closing bracket. Okay, cool. Yeah, we can see we're getting another bundle generated here. So we've got our second bundle, bundle 2, which contains the not found component. So let's say that's that one done. Now we've got a couple of trickier ones here because we're actually passing information down into them. And if you watch the previous episodes, this was more of just a bit of a temporary hack to have our blog posts stored in a JSON file which we import and just display, opposed to going off and requesting information from an API and kind of loading it on demand. So we're going to have to just do a little bit of extra trickery here. Nothing too bad. But if you were doing things in a little bit more of a sane way and less hacky way like I'm doing them, then you kind of wouldn't have to do this. So I'm going to require props here, and we're going to say, in fact, actually, we're not passing anything into our async route at the minute, of which we just want to kind of like spread out this props, which we end up passing down. So this is a way of just saying like, whatever component we're rendering, just from the very top React router, that will pass props down into our components. Let's just keep passing that all the way down. So we can delete our home import. We're not going to need that anymore. And this simply becomes our async route. And Then we're going to have to do a little bit of magic trickery where we say props is going to be equal to object.assign. First argument, empty object. Let's not mutate anything. Let's just create a new object and throw everything into there. And we're going to say props and posts. So essentially, props is just going to be this object where we've mashed props up and posts up together. So then we should be able to remove that. And then we need to just say our loading is going to be system.import home and home. And then we successfully compiling, we are, so we should have more bundles. So yeah, we've got a bundle with home in here, which is great. So let's see if this works in the browser. And it may well not, but it seemed to work there. We're still on good old 2G mode. Man. And I guess this emphasizes the point of why progressive web apps are cool, or why we should be striving to create progressive web apps that kind of are pretty small, that load quickly, because if you're in a fairly bad location, and I don't just kind of mean like bad location, let's rephrase that. If you're in the middle of the countryside and your connection's rubbish, if you happen to be in an area of the world where 4G kind of isn't a thing, then you want to make the web accessible. It's always a good thing. So if you were watching when this was loading, we just briefly saw a loading screen, and then all the posts kind of popped in place, which is good. And there we go, we saw it again. So we can navigate around. And once things have loaded, we don't see that loaded sign again. We've already got that bundle in place, so we can just navigate through our app perfectly. So, the trickiest one of them all is our blog detail page. Now, this is where things get a little bit interesting, but it's not too bad. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to, again, remove post detail. And we're going to render async root where props is going to be equal to object.assign empty object as our first argument. I'm going to throw props in here, and then I'm going to create a secondary object where we're going to pass post in and put post 0 there. Again, not ideal, it's just the way we're loading kind of data at this moment in time. So have I got enough moustaches everywhere? And I think I have. So then I just need to say loading is going to be equal to system.import. Ooh, what was I loading here? Let me just check. That was the post detail. Post detail / post detail. Cool, we're rendering correctly here. Splitting our bundles. I have heard, and I don't know if they still do it, but I did hear Facebook occasionally, was it like once a week or once a month or something, capped everybody's internet speed at a ridiculously slow rate, so they really could have empathy with people on slow connections, so they wouldn't just go and create really big fat web pages and bundles and things, which is cool, but I imagine very frustrating to develop with at the same time. So we should have all our bundles loading, and you can see them all trickling in through the network graph here, which is cool. And we can see, if we just were to dive into one of these bundles, we can see, hi, I'm Christian, so we can see this kind of that is our about page, which is rendering here. We got something in here, so this is the home page, so we can kind of inspect our bundles and kind of see what's in there. That's all fairly cool. So that's the main part of bundling, or code splitting, I should say. If we were using the more kind of spec compliant way and transpiling it through Babel, then we'd simply just, instead of system.import, it would just be the normal import syntax, similar to how we kind of have up here, but down actually in our main code, and it knows this piece of code is supposed to be dynamically generated. I think this is really kind of exciting when that actually lands as part of the spec, because that's a really handy way of being able to build large applications, yet not throw all the data down into the user to start with. So this probably will give us a little bit of a headache here in a second. So if I was to tar this back up again and throw it up to the server, no doubt that's just died on me. CD projects SSH and deploy that. Come on, I know you've done. Okay. Oh, I need to remember to keep building. It's been a long day. It's a Friday. It's been a busy day at work. I think I deserve a bit of slack. Where's my SCP? Copy it up to the server. Once it's up, let's call the deploy. That's better. So we can see all our kind of like all our little bundles here, and then corresponding map files. So load it here. Cool. So the one thing this is going to break is the styling, and the styling looks rather odd now, but only certain parts of the app which are being dynamically generated. So the header is required on every single page, so it's in the main application bundle. It makes sense. But this little bit of code here that's being loaded in via another bundle, if we were to inspect this, we see all the elements do have a class name, do have a class attribute, but no name attached to it. And this is where we just need to configure our Webpack configuration, and within our extract text Webpack plugin, I'm going to have to say something along the lines of, if I remember correctly, file name is going to be that, and all chunks is going to be true. So what the extract text plugin does by default is it's only going to extract the CSS it finds in the main bundle, which is our app file. All of our other bundles that we've just created using the import statement, it's not going to extract the text unless we say, for every single bundle, go and get that CSS, which is what all chunks true should do for us. So let me see if I can do this in one shot. Let's get it up from the bottom of the screen. First, build. Second, compress. Third, copy. Fourth, deploy. This will be a miracle if this works first time. And it does. Cool. So we can see we're now generating and putting the correct class names on there, so the CSS is kind of picking up and marrying up perfectly. Whew! It's been an interesting night. I didn't realise it was going to be that much trouble. Okay, so I think that's a good point to leave it at that point. Hopefully that's give you a good idea of kind of how to do bundling with Webpack, although again, try and use the import syntax opposed to system.import and see if that works for you, because that's ultimately where things are going. System.import was technically deprecated as part of Webpack 2, so bit of a caveat there. And then the rest of the thing is just making sure we've got 50 million icons for our application and that it looks good on mobile. And then we know that Android makes the application look absolutely amazing with the splash screen, minimal UI, the colour of the theme. Yeah, Android have done a really good job, and let's hope Safari can catch up with that. So let's wrap it up here. If you found this interesting and enjoy watching me scratch my head of why things aren't working and my inability to type, then hit the thumbs up button. If you're not already subscribed and you want to subscribe and get more of this, then hit the subscribe button. And then once you've subscribed, there's a little bell icon. And if you hit that, then you'll get alerted anytime I go live and do a live stream. If there's anything else you want to see, then hit it up in the comment section down below. Alternatively, if there's any cool kind of progressive-y web appy kind of thing I should be covering, yeah, let me know. Or if there's anything you'd have done differently, please let me know in the comments down below. If you're more of a Twitterer than a YouTuber, then follow me on Twitter, which is down, yeah, right down that way. And until next time, yeah, I think that's it. So thanks ever so much. I hope you've learned something. I hope you've not been too frustrated in me screwing everything up. And goodbye.